Mhm.
Well, hello everyone. It's wonderful to see you all again, and thank you for coming back to our non-duality and therapy meetings, which are really to discuss aspects of life that affect us on a daily basis, things that many people experience that can be challenging. We talked about depression, we've talked about the mind-body connection, and this evening we're going to talk about anxiety. And the reason I chose this topic was because anxiety is one of the main things that affects people, one of the main things people seek therapy for. And from a non-duality perspective, I think it's very interesting to discuss. From my experience, anxiety seems to be this sense of disconnection. It comes from a feeling of not being safe, of maybe the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen to us in the future. And that can create a sort of anxiety. And from my perspective, at least, it seems very different from fear. I think fear is a physiological response. So we see a snake or a spider and we will feel that fear response. It's the adrenaline, it's the cortisol, and that's a brain chemistry response. When it comes to anxiety, it seems quite different. And there's a great therapist, actually, Sue Gerhardt, who's written a book called Why Love Matters. And that's about how anxiety is set up in early childhood, which is that the hypothalamus pituitary axis gets stuck in fight or flight. So somebody's in, say, a sort of slightly traumatic environment, something goes wrong, they produce a lot of adrenaline, and the system gets stuck in that producing adrenaline response. And it becomes almost the baseline. So the cortisol becomes baseline too high. So the body is physiologically changed, the receptors are changed on a very real level. And then that is a physiological response. And I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts about the mind actually in relation to this, because it seems that that can then trigger thoughts. So when we have this sort of physiological sense of fear, it can trigger thoughts about it, which can feel quite panicky. I'm in a state of dysregulation, something feels wrong, and those thoughts might be more negative, more anxious, and that can then trigger the fear response as well. And that might be what causes what we call anxiety. Anxiety is completely crippling. People cannot work because of it, relationships fail because of it. There's all these ridiculously high statistics about the amount of billions of money that is lost because of people taking time off work because of stress and anxiety. It's a very real problem. So I really wanted to talk about it and hear a few thoughts from people about what they think anxiety is, and from a non-duality perspective, what do we mean by anxiety, and what's the solution? Because we really have to talk about it from a practical perspective, and I really appreciate all of you being here because I know that that's the sort of conversation you want to have. So I think that's enough from me. Does anybody have any thoughts from that introduction at all?
Go on, Michael. I think objectification itself has the baseline of fear. Life is frightening, especially when you can imagine a future or imagine catastrophic events that might occur to you or your family. It's frightening. Life is terrifying. I think that our tribe benefits from those of us who are prone to anxiety. We're the meerkat that stands on the highest bush that's constantly looking around, scanning. I think anxiety has a very positive uh, aspect to it when it comes to survival of the tribe. But for those individuals prone to anxiety, which I am one of those, and I think my genetic line has it. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was frightened all the time, terrified. Got in fist fights in bars. He was just frightened and frightening. Um, I have it. My son has anxiety. My dad, my uncles. I think it's genetic. I woke up one night and I wanted to die. I thought I was going crazy. I crawled up on the floor and curled up, and my wife says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know." Took me a long time to find a therapist. I went to doctors and psychiatrists, and they didn't know. They shook their head. And this little therapist, she said, "Oh yeah, that's a panic attack. I have them too." And about half the fear of the existential angst disappeared when I realized other people had this and that I wasn't going crazy. I think those of us prone to anxiety, I think a lot of in non-duality are. Something drives us to search for this fear inside. For 50 years, I searched um, a way to escape who I was or who I thought I was. Today I see it as a benefit. I think we're the sensitive ones. We're the ones that open our hearts to people in pain who look at other people and see them as heroes, see everyone as heroes. I saw a man getting into the car at the grocery store and he's having trouble lifting his leg. And I said, "Do you need help?" He said, "Oh no, I got it, but thanks." And I looked down and his leg was gone. He had a prosthetic leg. And I looked at him. I said, "Life is hard, isn't it?" He said, "Oh, yes, it is." And he started talking about phantom pain and how his leg aches sometimes and itches and he can't reach it because it's gone. And my heart just opened to him. I thought, I complain because I have a cough. Uh-huh. Um, oh, the
Michael,
more we,
would you make a distinction between, and I don't know if that distinction is made clinically, so maybe Claire can say, but do you make a distinction between the kind of anxiety that arises for a specific reason? Like someone loses their job or a lover or whatever, and that induces anxiety. But then there's also the other kind of anxiety that just arises for no apparent reason. So, I mean, would you make a distinction, or is there a distinction that's clinically made there? I don't know.
I think that the problem when we try to analyze and dissect is thinking of anxiety as a thing in itself. And it's not really. It's just a chemical reaction in the brain. And to to dissect or analyze anxiety from that, uh, more specific to your question, I think that we, as living, surviving organisms, are prone to anxiety. And as I mentioned, with the objectifying mind, more prone, really, because we can envision catastrophes in the future. Losing a job has anxiety, and it should have anxiety. Your whole foundation is threatened. You can't support yourself and your family. And I went bankrupt once. I was an alcoholic and had three businesses, and we were making a lot of money. And I had partners, and they ran away with all the money. And so I was left with all the bills, the government things, and I had a lot of anxiety. I had three little kids. No job skills, because I'd always owned a business, and that doesn't create job skills. And a wife, a lovely wife. And I had a lot of anxiety, which I think was logical at the time. Um,
Um, Sorry, Michael, do you want to finish?
no, no, I'm done. Thank
No, I
you.
was just
Um,
going to say the flight fight response that Claire mentioned, the
Yes.
flight fight, it can be useful. I mean, it used to be useful when you had to run away from a tiger who was going to
Mhm.
eat you. It would give you that neuroadrenaline in your body, and it
Yeah.
would give you extra strength to either fight or run, flight or fight. But now, of course, when the flight fight response is happening because you're in a traffic jam and you're trying to get somewhere, then that's not so healthy. So it can be
I
good.
think it's having thoughts about it, isn't it? I was going to say humans seem to be the only creature that knows we're going to die.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that my cats had anxiety, but I would say that they might feel fear, at least on a mammalian physiological level. But to have anxiety is, I think, Tony, as you were saying, to have these thoughts about it, stuck in a traffic jam, what does that even mean? The only reason that might create anxiety is because we can tell ourselves stories about the future. And that's the mind, I would say, because we have a
Yes.
thinking mind, we have anxiety, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
I think that when you talk about fear and the reaction, you know what you're frightened of. That's when you decide whether you automatically, almost instantly, to run or to stay. But you've got a very good idea what it is, which is causing you that call. Life is well made, in my view, and that reaction is there to protect us. So fear is a good thing to have. What happens when you're anxious is that you can't pinpoint what is the danger, but you are unconsciously aware that there is a danger to your life, whether it is because you've no money left, that you can't survive, that you may be fired, that somebody might stop loving you, that you can be ill, you can die. So you don't know all this. And this is actually the huge range of difficulties we have in life for which we have no answer and we can't pinpoint exactly. So for me, because I know what anxiety is, not I haven't suffered for years of it, but I think I've experienced some bouts of anxiety. I've always found the solution is like the fear. You need to find a reassurance or confidence that
Mhm.
actually those horrible things you can imagine are very unlikely to occur. I think it's almost like we lack the training and the education in anxiety dealing with. And for me, the only way you're not that anxious is when you have great confidence in life. Accepting it's not always perfect either.
Michael, you've got your
But
hand up.
where are you going to go? Where are you going to go with it, though, Sylvain?
Uh,
Um,
Tony, can we
because
just
I
hear from
mean,
Michael because he's just had his hand up, if that's okay.
No, I'm sorry,
oh
Tony.
right, yes, okay, all right. I didn't know we were
Uh,
doing the hands, right?
I think there's anxiety, and then there's capital anxiety, capital A anxiety.
That's called
Panic attack.
panic.
I'm sorry.
It could be panic, couldn't it?
Oh, sure. Go all the way from panic attacks down to generalized anxiety, which is not our enemy by any means. Um, Life is full of anxieties. That's what keeps us alive. Um, it's just when we imagine like death, Claire said, we can imagine our own death. Um, that's the problem. One of the existential angst problems with the illusion of self. Um, it comes with a baggage of generalized anxiety. That's the thing, the suffering of which the Buddha spoke. That's the thing we want to get away from. Um, there can be a point of view in which that is embraced as part of life. It's not our enemy. It's what keeps us alive. But then there's panic attacks. I grew up in a violent alcoholic home, and I was molested as a toddler. But I didn't know that. It took years of therapy. And one night I had a vivid dream where I went through the whole molestation, the pain, the fear, the calling for mommy, and mommy didn't come because she was probably drunk too. But I didn't know that. And I had to prepare the ground for that. I had to seek out qualified therapists. That's why I love Claire so much. She spent a lot of time learning her craft. Um, Without them, I think I would have gone insane. I would have killed myself. When I was in the middle of a panic attack, if I could have reached for a gun, I would have. It was that terrible. All I could do was moan, curl up in a fetal position. My wife would rub my back, and I didn't want her to touch me. I didn't want, God, it was awful. Um, Again, what that has done for me is open my heart. But I think we think of anxiety as just a generalized term, and it's not. It's a incredible spectrum of experiential things that are radically different. Panic attack is different than generalized anxiety. Um, I'm sorry, Tony, you were going to say something.
Um, I've forgotten what it was. You see, but actually, just picking up on that last point, that's an interesting distinction between what you call generalized anxiety and panic attacks. I'm not sure I know what the difference is.
Mm. Mhm.
I guess panic attacks, I mean, Michael, you can probably explain this more than me. It's more of a sort of extreme in the moment. It's when it's a physiological experience, isn't it? It feels like a total overwhelm of, well,
Hmm.
hormones.
Oh,
It's
it's
unbearable.
somatic.
Panic attacks are unbearable. You feel like you're a half an inch outside your body. Everything is buzzing. You're going crazy. It's just unbelievable. Um, and they last, it seems, an interminable amount of time. I could feel them coming on, and I had no way to protect myself from them. It starts with a tightness in the chest and then confused thoughts, and you know it's coming, and you try to prepare yourself for it. One time I started to have a panic attack as we were going to go into a Chinese restaurant. And I had had these before in public, and I had one at a chain called a Sizzler out here, and I wouldn't go into Sizzler after that because I associated panic attack with Sizzler. The brain did. So I wouldn't go to Sizzler anymore. So I thought, well, I really like this Chinese restaurant, so I'm just going to tough it out. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to go crazy or what. So I thought I got out of the car a very hot day in Southern California, and we had a Toyota pickup that had little plastic things, and I slammed my finger in the door as I got out because I was just shaking, and I slammed my finger in the door, and it hurt so badly, as those of us who know what that feels like. I went down to my knees in the pain, and my wife didn't see me, and she didn't know what was wrong. I said, "Oh, the door, can you open the door?" And her fingers were sweaty, and she couldn't get the knob open. So it's an interminable amount of time I was on the ground thinking, "Oh God, this hurts." But as she opened the door, the panic attack was gone. I thought, "Oh, wow, this didn't go all the way to my soul. It was superficial." So I learned little things like that, and qualified therapists, not your neighbor and not your friend and not your relatives. I don't think they can help. I know they can't. They have full of advice. But for me, it was qualified therapists who helped me through uh, with love and gentleness and sharing, openness and tears and laughter and healing. After years of therapy is when the dream came of being molested, and I didn't know that. And I thought, well, I won't tell anybody this. And I woke up and crying. I told my wife, and she held me, and I told my son. He later developed panic attacks too. So all of that learning and all of that working through, the body heals itself naturally. The mind can do that too. I believe we can heal of all of those things that follow us like specters in the night. I feel healed now. I don't know if it's illusion. I don't care. I feel sweet
I'm
and clean.
cog
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say I'm cognizant of the fact that Claire wanted to get non-duality into this somehow. And so I'm just kind of pondering on that.
Go on then,
Because
Tony. Tell us what non-duality is.
oh, because no, because just picking up on what Michael said, well, it's chemicals in the brain. So you either go that route and say, okay, it's chemicals in the brain, therefore maybe I can find some different chemicals that will counteract those chemicals. Um, because that's what I thought when Sylvan was talking. I was just thinking, well, where do you go with this? What do you do about this anxiety? But in a non-dual sense, well, that's something else. What is it? I've got no idea at the moment.
They blend.
It's of course approaching the subject about identity and separation, isn't it?
It's like two great rivers coming together, they blend. Non-duality for me has blended beautifully with conventional science. Um, the Rio Negro comes into the Amazon, and one is black and brown, muddy water, and Amazon is clear, and these two rivers come together. By the time they reach the ocean, they're one thing. Non-duality is not separate from what I see as conventional science. I love science. I think it's the only thing we have to grope our way through. And I appreciate so those people who have spent years studying and stay current with Clara staying current with her craft in bringing non-duality. And to me, they're not different. I don't see any different. I wrote a thing this morning on mirror neurons or the other day because it's so pertinent to, so relevant to non-duality. And I'm taking up too much time. I'm going to be quiet.
Not at all. I mean, what do you think, Tony? Because then and obviously with your meditation, there's for you, there's a sense that there's somewhere to get,
Oh, that's a
teach you're
perfect
sort of
segue.
suggesting meditation. So
Yeah,
what would you want
yeah.
to share?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a perfect segue because I was just thinking of a very, very practical example that comes from my own experience. And that is to do with the flight fight response, going back to that again, because I discovered very soon after I started meditating, many years ago, that it wasn't long before there was a very noticeable effect, and that is that the flight fight response became subdued. It lost its reactivity, and that was a direct result of the meditation.
You mean that you didn't identify with something anymore? Because I think when there's an
No, it's
identification
closer
with
than that.
something, that can create an
No, no,
anxiety.
no, it's closer than that. And I'll give you an example. It was like, sometimes if you're somewhere and there's a loud bang, or an explosion or whatever, you jump out of your skin. Well, I discovered that not long after I started this practice, I was in fact in a situation where there was a very loud bang and I didn't react at all. And it kind of took me by surprise. It took
What's
me by
interesting,
surprise.
Tony, is they've actually done studies about this, and it's been proven that psychopaths don't jump at loud noises. I'm
Well,
not
then you'd better
suggesting anything
watch
of the
out, Claire.
sort. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's this sort of when you get to a
Yeah,
point where
yes.
you can almost flatten your not flatten. This it's different, isn't it? Because you're not flattening your emotional response. You're seeing
Yeah,
through
I got to
the
be
emotional response.
careful
You're
here
not being
because
manipulated by it.
I got to be careful here because that lesser reactivity to the flight fight response isn't. I'm not saying that flattened everything and I became emotionless and devoid of, the full spectrum of human experience. None of that was affected. It was just that kind of particular thing to do with reactivity. So it wasn't anything to do with identifying with it because there was no thinking or self-reflective thinking involved in it. There was the loud bang and then, oh, no reaction.
Yeah.
So no time to think about it or analyze it or whatever. So that was just a practical thing
Yeah, I think
that I can
just
say about that.
And just to say quickly, I know Raja's got her hand up. It seems to be that there's a sort of conceptual thing which is bypassing. So the loud bang might go off, and you might be sort of forcing yourself not to react or flattening it. And then there's the genuine sense of actually it doesn't affect me because I see that it's
Oh,
part
yeah, I
of
don't
me,
know.
and it's
I
sort of a
think that's
different,
already, yeah, I
it's a
understand
depth,
what you're
it's
saying, but
deeper.
I think that's already too much. I think that's already too much. I think it's just much, much more simple. Something to do with the neurology, um, the parasympathetic nervous system and the way the mind work together. I don't know. I wouldn't call it conceptual in any way at all. I don't know what it is, but it was certainly something that was noticeable.
Thank you. Sorry, Razia.
Uh, well, I don't know much about what I'm going to talk about, but I have a vague idea, right? It's a concept of adaptability that we have all these uh, what endorphins, chemicals in our brain, endorphins, dopamines, and everything, right? So what happens is initially when we go into the state of uh, I don't know, when you shift. Initially, when you shift, there is this feeling of intense ecstasy. You feel like so high that you cannot contain this anymore, and like it's like over the top, right? And gradually, this thing kind of like changes. Like now, it's like although you are in that shift, you are not experiencing that amount of uh, uh, ecstasy or bliss for that matter. It's like kind of like now you're getting used to it, like you are living in that. I don't know because it's chemicals in the brain, and I'm talking from my experience rather than from textbook knowledge. Okay, what has happened to me? So gradually, I started to feel like just this intense bliss all the time. You're just happy and you don't know why. And yeah, and it was like that. It happened like over like a 3 year period. I was like constantly in this kind of high. So I was wondering about that, like whether after a while, just like with other chemicals, if you take like antidepressives, antidepressants, sorry, right? Okay, you can also call them antidepressants. But antidepressants, after a while, your body starts to get accustomed to it. So where you were taking one antidepressant, now sometimes you have to take two or you have to take three for it to. So I don't know whether this is how the chemicals that happen, like are naturally released in the brain now, whether that's how they are also like we get to a state where we are uh, not going to be experiencing the same highs or whatever it is. So I don't know, like I don't know much about it, but I'm just trying to say like how I experienced this. Like it was like being in that high all the time, and it was so like being okay, and then suddenly like now when you have people, like we're talking about mirror neurons, right, and empathy. So, like Michael tried to explain it via mirror neurons, right? Like you are interfacing with someone else, and that person is feeling sad. You kind of pick up on that, like this person is feeling sad. I am feeling sad. Like I don't know, and but then it doesn't explain lots of empathy, and empathy has been proved. I think Michael did say that at one stage, that people were able to prove that I can pick up someone else's sadness, you know, or someone else's pain, and I can pinpoint exactly where that pain is coming from, kind of a thing. So this would imply that there is like a collective kind of consciousness that emerges. So I don't know. So I don't know, I mean, I'm just putting a whole lot of ideas out there, and hopefully someone would be able to make some sense of
I've
it.
got
Thank
so
you.
many thoughts for you, Razia, but I'm not going to jump in. I'm going to let Sylvan share something. I'll come back to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, what I wanted to say, I also wanted to answer Tony because I thought he was going to say where was I going with what I was saying earlier on. I think that actually today we are very, very quick in society to find that something is wrong and we must do something about it. It's a problem. Like if we were talking about fear, the fight or flight situation, when you consider it, it's a tremendous advantage that we have to be able to react, on time to protect ourselves. But for other suffering, like anxiety, for example, people will say it's a bad thing. I need a pill. I want something to stop it now, and it's a bad thing. And I think life is better than that. And when we suffer from any ailment, we should always ask ourselves, what can I gain from it? if it were to help me, where would it be? And I think that as far as anxiety is concerned, when one is anxious, it probably it's a bit late already. But I think the cause of anxiety is got to, and probably Claire, you would know that when you go back, in time with people and whether children and whatever, that actually there is a lack of understanding of who we are and how we function. And from my point of view, I think anxiety, it's a symptom and it should be used positively. Yes, if you are in a terrible state, by all means, take some chemicals to calm you down. But I think that it shouldn't be the end of it. One should carry on finding out why caused it in the first place and how one can get more confidence in being actually a human being and being able to deal with our issues.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a very well balanced way of looking at it, I think.
Michael had his hand up. Michael, you're on mute.
Um, this idea of antidepressants alone has a whole group of ideation that comes with it. About 4 years ago, my son called. It has the same anxious problems that I have. Um, he called up and said, "Dad, on the advice of our shared psychotherapist, said, Dad, I'm taking Lexapro." I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay." I said, "What is that?" He told me about it, and he said, "It's really changed my life." I said, and so he didn't mention it anymore, and I thought, no, no, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and blah, blah, blah. I really don't want to take any pills, blah, 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 blah. And he, about it, I don't know, a short while after, he said, "Dad, I really think your life would be improved." Because I still, even after this so-called shift in perspective, I still had anxiety issues. And if it got too bad, I would take something that ended in Pam. There's a lot of them. The Zorapam, I think, was it. I didn't crave anymore. And every doctor assured me that it wasn't addictive and at the dosage I was taking. And if the anxiety got too bad, I would take a Lizorapam. And so after I have an under like a certain level of anxiety. I think it's genetic, as I mentioned. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think I'd like to hear Claire's opinion of that. Um,
I'd like to share it.
uh, I decided to talk to my doctor and talk to all the people I could, and I started taking the Zorapam. And of course, for the first 2 weeks, I hated it, and everyone does. And my son said, "Oh, just stick to it, Dad." And I did, and it changed my life. That constant ground base level anxiety disappeared. And I don't care. I've mentioned this at meetings and I get untold flack because I'm taking a chemical. I don't care. I'm 82 years old and it makes my life easy. It makes me feel like I think my wife feels, like I think normal people feel. I just don't have that baseline anxiety anymore. And I don't care. I don't crave more. It's the lowest form of lowest dosage of Lizorapam. And I don't care about that even. But I don't crave more. It does have effects. Um, uh, Physiological effects that I prefer weren't there, but that's okay with me too. Um, I I don't think there's anything wrong in taking chemicals to reverse the chemical reactions in the brain. And that can be carried to extreme, of course, in people that keep taking mushroom or whatever to sustain themselves. And that's even okay with me too. It's better than suicide. I can't judge anybody else's life, but I know for me it's made it so much easier. My life is so peaceful now. I rarely, if ever, get upset. I joke about the old self, and I bought my wife some pepper spray in case she ever was by herself, which she never is. She could defend herself. And I say, honey, honk at that guy. I want to try this pepper spray. So that man thing is still there, but I enjoy life so much more now. Claire, I think you had your hand up.
I did. I have a few thoughts about what you shared about anxiety, Michael, and the taking the medication, what might be going on, and actually related to Razia as well. He was talking about the empathy and the mirror neurons, and this ability that we have to absorb pain from other people, to absorb fear, perhaps as well. Because I think something that can be quite interesting is this sense of connection that we have to other people can sometimes be overwhelming if you feel it on a very deep level. And I know that you do, Michael. You're one of the most loving men I know. You just have this instant rapport with people. You almost take them into you. They become who you are. You know, you're so incredibly open. The whole world is your friend. And you sort of, in Razia, I think you're maybe, I don't know that much, but it's this sort of deep empathy that you have this ability to absorb people, who they are. They come into you. And I wonder how much is this sort of need for having that separation sometimes, you know, and in a and that, but in a bizarre way, you would think that the separation was what caused the anxiety, because that sense of separation is what creates that sense of there's me and there's you, and that means that I'm not in control and anything could happen. So it's sort of paradoxical that there needs to be the separation in order to not have the fear, but the separation can also be what can create the fear. So it's sort of having that balance between the separation and the collective, you know, they're both just as real as each other. And I mean, anger's an interesting one, isn't it? Because that to me is related to boundaries. So when there's that kind of frustration with people, that irritation with people, that to me suggests something about separation, something about boundaries. It's also sort of nebulous, and there's no right answer to this. But I would say that some of the anxiety might be around actually who's me and who's everyone else. And can I get that right for me? Do I feel comfortable in my own skin, kind of navigating the world? Do I feel safe doing that? Is that sense of separation here? Yet at the same time, that sense of not being separate, because that's what we need in order to feel connected and to not have the anxiety. So I'm not entirely sure what my point is, but there's something very interesting here about empathy and having this shared sense of being collective, yet at the same time having our own individual energy, which keeps us protected. And Sylvan's got his hand up, so I don't know if you're able to add on to this. I know you're probably going to say something else, but we were talking about this quite a lot the last few days, so maybe you can share something on that as well as what you're going to say.
I was listening to Michael talking about taking some chemicals, which I perfectly understand. I've taken some myself when I needed to. I think that's what they're there for, so to give you a respite in your suffering. And during that respite, you might be able to work out how you don't need to take pills anymore, if you can, and if you can't, carry on. But I think that what my experience of actually chemicals is that actually it would soften my thinking. All it did is actually, making sure that actually those or panic or anxious sort of thoughts would actually not occur. And I learned from the chemicals to actually do it for myself without the chemicals. And I'm pretty certain that if we were to ask Tony about meditation, he probably would say, probably rightly, that actually people who are meditating can lower their anxiety simply because they calm their brains and the thinking is not so intense. And that in itself has an effect. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes. Oh, I just you're talking about empathy, Claire, but I just Michael said something that is obviously true. You said something about when people give you advice, it's never any bloody good, right? You know, when people give you advice, they think they're really helping you, but it's really not very useful, is it? So that's how I would respond to Claire's empathy point. Um, it's just not very useful because people have a particular perspective about what they think your problem is.
Mm.
And it just doesn't hit the mark somehow when you're in that state of turmoil, does it? It doesn't touch it.
I
somehow.
wonder if there's an attempt to do that with this sort of empathy. You expand yourself out in order to try and connect with that person. So there's not that separation. You feel their pain. So when you give a response, it's almost like it's very close to who they are. Maybe. But Michael, I put
Are
across
you
you.
giving out empathetic signals in a therapeutic setting to your clients?
I think there's a mirroring. There's as Michael says, that's all this is. It's you're being a mirror for people. And if you've got that ability to be a very clear mirror, then I think you're a very good therapist. I think that's sort of where I'm going with that. Michael, I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I, I I never give advice to anyone. I really don't. I talk, and then it may sound like advice, but it's not. In my interface with people in my day to day, I think someone passes by and I'll say, it spontaneously comes up. I'll say, you have the most beautiful smile. And they'll say, what? I said, your smile is beautiful. And oh, thank you. Um, this sharing light with others. There are two college girls buying groceries. We have a college in the town next to us, and one of them was just dancing. I said, "Oh, hon, there's no dancing in the grocery store." She said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I don't know why that is." So we started laughing. That type of interface, the joy of simply being, is not advice. It's sharing, s- soothing. When people share light, it's light on light, is what Rumi says. For advice, I think qualified therapists are the place to go, not your neighbor, who have their own issues and they're not really listening to, they're not paid listeners. In hospice work, they teach you to listen, not talk, to listen. And that's the greatest gift of all. Therapist gives with knowledge to they're trained listeners to get somebody to vomit out their past, shed their tears, and do whatever. They're perfectly allowed and comfortable to do that. And part of it is being paid. They're giving money for this. They don't want to waste too much of their time. My therapist is $320 an hour. Um, I'm not going to go in there and talk about the weather. I'm gonna divulge out what it hurts, what's bothering me. Um, I I just this sharing light, giving the people a glimpse of how beautiful they are. That's the way I see them. I'm not faking this. I see everyone as incredibly beautiful. I don't care. There was an old grumpy cowboy in line, and he had one of the hats, and they bend cowboy hats differently than they used to. It's a crease. So I put my hand on his back. I said, I like that new way they're bending cowboy hats. He said, I do too. I said, it's different. We usually roll them up. He says, yeah, I know. I said, you look good in that. He said, oh, thank you. And he did. I loved it. I just loved that moment. Well, he became part of me. Like all of you have become part of me. You are who I am. You are the light in my life. You are the light of humanity pouring into whoever I am. I don't know who I am because I don't actually exist, but I get a glimpse of how delightful it is to be human through you. Um, that's light and warmth. I love you. I love being here with you. Thank you, Claire, for this meeting.
Yes. You're on mute, Phyllis. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry to be late, so I don't know what's been said. So that's kind of a
Yeah,
hard place
say
to jump in.
whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah. But I kind of echo, I guess maybe it's an age thing, who knows? I've stopped the beauty of this is I've stopped looking for cause and effect. You know, I don't know why I feel a certain way, but I feel that way. And however I feel is okay with me. And for me, that's sort of definition of a lack of anxiety. And if I feel sad, well, that's sadness. But I know the distinction between sadness and anxiety. You know, I won't go through the whole story, but I had fainting spells as a child, you know, lots of them. And only much later in my life did I learn, oh, that's called anxiety, you know, when you pass out, because I was trying desperately to get out of a situation, and there were no alternatives to not being there but passing out. So I guess that's an extreme form of anxiety. But once, I don't know, it seems like once I'd had it as a child, it kind of kicked in much later in life. It's like, oh, you know the way out, huh? So it's the body remembers that. And yeah, I've had multiple occasions when I've had uh, taken anti-anxiety medication, and I think it saved my life. I was, you know, quite suicidal for different parts of my life, and especially one part. And without the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety, I would, you know, there was just nothing. It was, and at another point, the only thing that kept me from suicide were the pills, and that I had children, and I couldn't see myself. I kept seeing myself jumping out of a window, and I thought, I can't jump with them, huh? But I see how mothers do that, you know, it's an extreme form of, I don't know when anxiety becomes neurosis, I guess it is a neurosis, and neurosis becomes psychosis. I mean, you know that, Claire. I don't know those terms, but
Yeah,
then,
psychosis is a break from reality.
well, I think
Similar.
I had, yeah, similar. I had that kind of anxiety. And when I moved, I don't know, there was a lady here another time. When I moved, I had to Europe. I was in a department store, and all of a sudden, I thought, oh, there are no windows here. I can't. And I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe, and all my entire life was getting out of that, getting out of that department store. So, and only later they said, well, that's anxiety too, you know, and it was. And then I would have anxiety attacks. Anyway, they they take it's. I guess Freud said, you know, the symptom is mobile. Huh? It's you get a fly swatter at it in one place, and it comes back somewhere else. You know, kind of moves around. It's very clever, because finally, I don't know who said, what it is trying to get the body is trying to get the person or the me's attention. Huh? Attention. You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you, and you won't be able to breathe, or you're gonna have heart palpitations. So it's a way of the body saying, no, 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 this isn't right. Huh? It's telling you maybe your life isn't right. Who knows? Uh, we can't know much, but now I know my escape route. So it doesn't. And once it feels like those pills are like an insurance policy. Since I know I can have as much lorazepam as I want for the rest of my life, as I'm 78, guess what? I hardly ever need it, because it's like insurance. It's sort of like mother is at home, you know, the feeling of all is well, and mother is there to take care of me. And perhaps those first paintings, and that's just sort of occurred to me, were that, you know, mother wasn't at home. She wasn't taking care of me. You know, she wasn't there. She wasn't there. And so I couldn't be there. And somehow maybe lots of medicine. Who knows? Can be a placebo effect, but since I know I can take it, I don't need to take it, because nothing, I feel like, Michael, at my age, nothing is forbidden. Why would I forbid myself? Or obviously, I would never tell someone else what to do, unless they ask for it. My daughter has breast cancer, and I had it, and she hasn't asked me about it, and I've zipped it up, not a word. There's something as deep as that. All I could do is open the heart, but what we have to live through, we have to live through. It's not my job to tell her how to live or to die, right? So, and I'd say antidepressants have different kinds, have on and off, have saved my life. So I don't know what else was said about anxiety, but when I feel it, maybe it was Roger said, when I feel it in other people, when I used to have anxiety, I had to go away from them because there is that empathy, and all I could empathize with their anxiety was meeting them with my anxiety, and that served no one. But perhaps now, I guess there's less of that. If I feel someone is like that, I don't flee them. I can see their call for help. As I'm saying, I will not give advice, but I can be there, and like Michael said, I can be walking in the store and telling a woman, "Those are beautiful glasses. Where did you get them?" Because I find that women rarely give other women compliments. Anyway, so I feel like a more open human, like a more all encompassing, because there's no fear. And that's, I guess, what the basis is anxiety is fear that's not attached to a real, something real, something imaginary, or we don't know. So that's what I had to say.
Thanks, Phyllis. I know you don't mean to be helpful, but I think you are being helpful by the fact that you don't mean to be helpful. You just sharing your experiences, particularly the experience in early life, which you're absolutely right. I think people don't like to accept and appreciate that they're physical. We're physical creations. We've got a body, we've got a nervous system, we've got a system that regulates us. And if that hasn't been educated to us and how to use that in the right way, it can get stuck in a system that can create anxiety, which Michael knows, which I know, which you know, which many of us know. So that, you create that trap door of escape because you figure out a way to manage it yourself with no tools whatsoever. So it's always a bit haphazard. And once that trap door's open, you kind of use that as your defense mechanism until you encounter non-duality and realize that it's all okay anyway. And the mechanism is part of it. It's not like it's a dangerous, damaging thing. It's a gift. It's a beautiful thing. There's no separation. It's an illusion of separation. That's what the mechanism is. It's that sort of, you've cut yourself off, even though you haven't. So it's a sort of paradox, I suppose. But I think it's really important to talk about it because people don't really. So thank you. I always appreciate what you share, and it's very nice to see you and your flower picture. I'd rather see you, but I'll accept the flower.
Okay, flower's pretty. I can
It's all
try.
pretty.
I get it wrong each time, but so it's.
Thank you.
But can I just ask one question? What you just said, Claire? What it's cutting yourself off from? You said you would. That's what you would say. Anxiety was cutting yourself off.
Body, there's a disconnection from the body because that's what you do, isn't it? You freeze. Yeah. Yeah, you don't feel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Well, not really, but if you feel the freeze, that's anxiety. No? But does it matter where we know where it comes from or not? It's just not, we know that it's not real, but the body feels it is real.
Does it matter if we know where it comes from? And I don't know. I mean, I've got a lot of clients who we don't really talk about the past with because what does it really matter? What matters is the present. But sometimes it can help de-shame it because a lot of people are saying to me, I don't know why I'm anxious because nothing's wrong. I've got a good family and a good job. And I might say, well, maybe something happened to make you anxious in the past that you're still carrying on. So from that perspective, it might be helpful to have a look at it.
Mhm.
It can seem to be helpful for people to sort of make a logical story in their head. It can be a better story than there's something wrong with me. The
Mhm.
story that there is something that happened to me, and that's why I am the way I am. And then they can feel a bit more relaxed, and then they can, accept things a bit more. So a bit like Tony in his meditation, it's a sort of path in a way, helping people to reframe their story, I guess.
Mhm.
I'm not a gospel. I'm not saying that it's
Right.
it's all this.
Yeah, no, thank
This
you.
is what everyone must do. Don't listen to me.
Mhm.
Razia.
Technically, it's all story. So I don't know. Like, I mean, where does the story end, and where does there's technically no such thing as reality, too, or truth for that matter. Uh, but I mean, I like what Phyllis said because it somehow like it contradicts what Michael said. You know, Michael said go to a professional. You know, I know. I mean, to go to a professional is the thing to do. But at the same time, I wouldn't discount that Phyllis, having been through the whole process, knows what it is. You know what I mean? If she's been through depression and she's handled it, she has already given us like a kind of uh, what you say. She's like trying to tell us exactly how she's been through it and how she's handled it, which is which will give you also some hope. Like, hey, listen, this person has been through the deepest depression, and she's come out of it. She's been through a stage where she wanted to jump out of a window. I mean, that is bad, like, you know. And yes, she is sharing her story. So there is that kind of a hope, which is good when you go to like look at let's find out what others have been through and how they have coped. And basically, also I was going to say like, um, you know, when this like kind of like when I first started feeling like kind of like depressed. I remember that one day sitting on my bed and suddenly it just fell away. It just fell away. This whole thing just went down and I felt it. And it was like, gosh, the thoughts just came flooding in. It was like, God, how am I going to live like this? You know, I was thinking about that because there was this like a whole barrage of thoughts. And then and in that same moment, I put my attention away from that, like, no, 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 I'm not going to go there. And it went away, you know, and thank God I was like out of it. But it's like, it's scary. Yeah, so you don't know, like she says, sometimes life gives you curve balls and you don't know. Like maybe it's trying to tell you, Razia, take care of this, you know? Or maybe like Claire says that we're trying to not see through that maybe there is something here that needs to be
Yes.
addressed. You understand? So, yeah, in that way, I think it's so awesome that when you get to Zooms like this and you listen to people and what they have to say, and it kind of changes stuff in your own head so that now you are responding to stuff in a whole different way, like, you know, rather than personalizing this and making it into a story. You're like kind of looking, staring back and saying, hey, this is how this happens and this is what is happening. And still at the same time, you feel the sadness that comes through, which is like, I mean, the depths that humans can go through. That there is that, that is there. There is that happening in the story of who we are. It's part
Mm,
of our story. This tremendous depths. And then we rise to ecstasy. We feel this joy. Someone talks about smiling, and we're all smiling. Just curve your lips and you feel this joy that comes out. I mean, somehow or the other, we have this connection. And thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share that. I love you guys.
Love you, Michael.
I think for some reason in non-duality and uh, schools, quite often the advisors will say, meditate, quiet the mind, almost as if that's possible. I tried meditation for 10
Mhm.
years. I joined Transcendental Meditation when they were $150. I think they've gone up. And we couldn't afford it. But told my wife, I said, I'd really like to do this. She said, okay. So I tried it for 6 months. They give you a secret mantra, which you're led to believe no one else has. Come to find out, they have only seven that they give out. And for 6 months, I chanted to myself, Shareem, 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 Shareem. I did it.
That was mine too, Michael.
Was it?
I was given the same one as you.
Well, come to find out, I was pronouncing it wrong. So after 6 months, I got a review, and the young man, beautiful young man, said, let's practice together. I said, okay. Shareem, Shareem. He said, no, it's Sharim, Sharim. I said, really? And my first thought was, 6 months I've wasted. I have
You've
to
done it all
start
wrong. I
all
would have
over.
it Shireen, to be honest.
Oh, I finally got it right. And for the next 10 years, I did it. And I took away time from my kids. And of course, one time I went bloop for a microsecond. And I thought, oh, that's it. I want more of that. So I tried again. Of course, the brain had ways of protecting itself, I think. It never came back. But we can't stop the mind. The mind is its movement. Like a river is its movement. You stop a river and it's not a river anymore. You stop the mind and it's not a mind, assuming you can stop it. Self is this constant internal stream of thoughts. That's who and what we are. Um, Meditation, I think, Nisargadatta, whoever picks up on these things, Nisargadatta would send people home and tell them to meditate. And I believe that's because they were a pain in the ass and he just wanted to get them out of the room because they weren't ready for what he had to talk about. They constantly interrupted him and were pests. So he said, go home and meditate. So people said, Nisargadatta said, meditate. Ramana says, meditate. Same reason, I think. Um, I don't think meditation is a panacea. I think it can have wonderful calming effects for a while, but they don't last. I was the same guy after 10 years. Uh, um, it takes intervention. Alcoholics and drug addicts, sometimes interventions are necessary. Families get together and say, you hurt me. I'm hurt. I'm wounded. I don't want to see you die. An intervention. And for me, it was professional help. It was time. I was time to heal. We can't push healing on the body. We can't, we can't push healing in the mind. But something gravitates towards healing. I believe that. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if anything's true. But I know life is so easy now. I don't wish I would have known this earlier. Everything I went through had to be just so. Everything. 18 years of practicing alcoholic. Yep. I apologized to the people I hurt, and they said, "Oh, that's okay." I started to forgive myself. Forgiveness sleeps with me now. There's nothing to forgive if we don't have a choice. God, it's good to hear you, Phyllis. I love the sound of your voice. I remember when you were in the Shadowland. It was so hard, and you're so heroic. I love you. I don't know if she can hear me or not. Thank you. Claire, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michael. Thank you. Of course, how, that was one of the key, you know, in the story. It's always the story, but it isn't it always the story, even as the story of non-duality. You know, that's a. But we don't care about the story. But the body, this person has that story, and there's no way of, what do I say, escaping it or loving it more. I guess it's loving it more and more. And Michael taught me, got me back on track that I could love myself instead of stay in this wherever I was, an unexplicable uh, darkness. And it there's so much hope in that. And once it's gone, I can't say it'll never come back. It has it has its own life, those things. You know, we can't say now that I'm awake or now that I'm more aware, I won't get anxiety. No. How do you know that? It's not as if non duality makes us big know it alls that are huh? Never going to get cancer, never going to get uh, high blood pressure, or never going to get anxiety attacks. How can we know? How pretentious is that to know? You know, we're just a speck of, who knows, like Michael says, a reflection of a speck of a star that I see in your eye. And that can't know anything. It can just love the, it can just love the light it sees in that reflection. But it can't say, tomorrow I won't have an anxiety attack because I feel so good today. No, nothing holds on to nothing. I think that's maybe what, who knows? I'll get into a teaching thing. you know, nothing, nothing stays. That happiness cannot stay. That's not the nature of life. Nature of life is to change.
I don't think happiness can stay. I think there can be a sort of acceptance that can stay, and I think unhappiness to me is lack of acceptance, or a lot of it is. I,
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. We can't avoid cancers, we can't avoid being hit by a bus tomorrow, we can't avoid things like that. But I do think we can avoid anxiety. I think anxiety to me is something that is just it's misunderstood. When there's a lack of awareness, then that's what causes the anxiety. So there is an ability to be aware, there is an ability to be content. So I sort of yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming at it from, but maybe we agree, maybe that's what you mean as well.
I don't know what I mean. I forgot it already. I don't mean anything. It just sort of comes out, huh? Just sort of spews out.
I think it's nice to think that I was at Tim's meeting where I saw Razia and Michael, and we were talking about this. It's a sort of lullaby, it's a reassurance that we can tell ourselves, which is that the great unknown is a state of peace.
Mm.
Peace is a word, yet it's a word that kind of denotes a feeling of safety, love, beauty. There are words that you associate the unknown with that feel, on a level that we can't describe, feel more accurate or feel more. But it's a lullaby because I can't say that. There's nothing you can say. But people get hooked, don't they, to the words? They're like children. Oh, tell me more, reassure me, reassure me. I want to know that it's all going to be okay. And you've got to say to them, I can't do that, but you can do that for yourself. You can sing yourself that lullaby, but it can't come from, you're not a child anymore. I think a lot of people are still looking for that good enough parent to nurture them and to tell them it's all okay, because nobody really had that. So they're constantly looking for it in the world. So to sort of say to them, you don't need that, you can do that for yourself.
Mm.
And my original point I was going to make actually was about childhood. I think Razia inspired it. And it's how anxiety is caused by things we don't understand. When you're 4 years old and something's happening that makes absolutely no sense, somebody's acting unconsciously, shouting at somebody for reasons you can't understand, that unconscious behavior that doesn't make any sense to you because it feels unnatural. When you don't have that awareness of, okay, well, that's unconsciousness, that person's got trauma of their own, that person's acting out of a nervous system response, that person's acting out of their own conditioning. How on earth can you understand that at such a young age? You have not got that capacity. So what you see is something that doesn't make any sense. And I think as humans, things that don't make sense make us anxious. When we don't, something's happening and we're like, why the heck is that happening? This doesn't resonate. I don't understand. Then you think, well, fear is real. There's a reason for me to be afraid, right? There's something out there that is frightening and I don't understand it. So my fear is legitimate. And I would say the fear is sort of not legitimate, but it is at the same time. In some situations, yes, there's a real threat in some situations. But when we're adults and we have these conversations, we can almost sort of reparent ourselves. We give us that lullaby, that reassurance that things can be okay and you can understand things and things don't need to feel frightening. You don't need to have anxiety. And that to me, so sort of the more we have these conversations, the more Phyllis you share, the more everyone shares, the more we see, oh, you too, oh, you had that experience and you're okay. I understand it in a way that I didn't understand it before. Okay, that makes sense that, that person acted in that way. That makes so much more sense to me. And the world becomes less scary. We're getting so close to understanding things, I think, as a human species. The leaps and jumps in psychology and AI and how everything is just coming together in a way that just seems like it's sort of making sense on a level I can't quite put into words, but it seems that we're on the brink of actually some sort of discovery, or it feels very promising, I think, the way that psychology is going and, the scientists and discovery of consciousness and what caused it and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But until you understand that, there's going to be anxiety because you think, okay, well, where did this come from? It's like the snake being the rope or the rope being the snake. You're not close enough, you're not mature enough, you're not equipped enough to quite go close enough to it. But when you are and you do, then it feels a lot more manageable. So that was what I wanted to talk about, anxiety and understanding and forgiveness as well, because I think when you understand, you can forgive. So it all goes hand in hand.
That was brilliant, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Razia.
Hi, thanks, Glenn. Somehow you bring it all together. And it's so awesome. Yeah, it touches you somewhere. And oh yeah, I was going to tell you about Ashok Pandey. He speaks a little bit of English, but he mostly speaks Tamil. I mean, not Hindi, yeah? Yeah. So I invited him because gradually he will participate as he becomes more used to us. Hi, Ashok. Love you. Yeah, and okay, I was going to talk about also, the AI stuff, right? That I find so fascinating. Uh, it's like someone told me, just give me all your symptoms and then put it into this AI bot, and it'll come up and tell you what's wrong with you. I mean, that's how advanced they are, right? And I was just thinking that when we get to that stage where it becomes so impersonal, you know, you're just going to tell an AI, and an AI is going to recommend what you take and stuff like that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know about that. Yeah. But I mean, the fact is, will we miss this human connection? That is it. And yeah, and Michael brought up choice. I think at the end of the day, that's so important to always keep that in mind. That everything that happens is, we don't have a choice really. What happens, happens. And when you deal with it in that way, it's like you're not now in a blaming kind of a thing, like now going out there and finding faults with others, you know? Yeah, like trying to put this onto other people. What you can do. Like I spoke to my son who went through a hard time, but he's recovering now. And yeah, so yeah, he fell off a bike. And then I asked him, hey, I said, Shabby, what happened? Then he said, Mom, I fell off a bike. And I said, oh, those people, they were so careless. It's all about the bike people now, you know, and how they, because of that, like he landed up and got hurt. And he said, no, Mom, it was my fault. He took responsibility for it. And I was so proud at that moment. It was like, wow, this is it. Like, we need to get there, like, you know, and take responsibility for the things that happen in our lives. And yeah, and sometimes you learn from your children. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much.
We've just got 8 minutes left. I don't know if anybody wanted to share anything else. Oh, Mario.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say something to Ashok Panda. In case he wanted to say, share something, whatever, I can translate. I speak Hindi as well. अशोक, आपको कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं तो हमें बताइए, हम इनके साथ हम बातचीत कर सकते हैं, आपके साथ में चाहिए तो.
No, I don't want to share now.
नहीं, हिंदी में बात कर लो. हिंदी में बताओ. हमें हिंदी में आती है. अंग्रेजी की जरूरत नहीं है.
ना, मैं अभी कुछ नहीं बोलूंगा. नेक्स्ट मीटिंग में ये मेरा पहला सेशन है. जिंदगी में पहले बार कोई जूम मीटिंग में अटेंड किया. बिफोर आई हैव कभी मैं कोई मीटिंग नहीं देखा.
अच्छा.
वो मेरा पहला अनुभव है. मैं दूसरा टाइम में जब होगा मैं बोलूंगा.
ये लोग जो बातचीत कर रहे हैं, आपको समझ में आती है?
पूरा समझ में नहीं आता है. बहुत हद तक मैं समझ पाता हूँ.
ओके. हम अंग्रेजी में बताते हैं बाकी लोगों को. So what he says is that this is the first time that he's been in a Zoom meeting. He did not understand, some of the conversation, and I'm not sure what percentage, but he didn't understand some of it. But he says that as he goes along the following meetings, he'll probably be able to participate a bit more.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mario. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's really lovely to have you both here as well. Thank you.
Indeed.
Anything else, or should we call it a night?
I just wanted to say one thing, Claire, about but to Michael as well, is about the meditation bit, right? So it's neither here nor there. But for instance, I've got a, slightly older neighbor, and she, she's going through some issues and stuff like that, and split up with the boyfriend, getting older, this, that, and the other, and she, from time to time comes and knocks at my door to, just to talk to someone, kind of thing. And and I found that her mind, is kind of racing. It's all over the place, kind of thing. With one anxiety over the other, and going back to the first one, that type of thing. And in that situation, I said to her that that maybe when these things start to get overwhelming, maybe just focus on your breath, just in and out and in and out, kind of thing. No mantras, no nothing, whatever, but just, and she came the other day to knock on my door to say that, oh, that helps a lot, So, in a way, I guess, yes, I do get it that, as a strategy towards sort of, dropping the mind, it might not be a, you know, a thing that works, all the way to, so to speak. But as for someone who's, you know, eh, in a way trapped in the mind again, so to speak, and is believing all of these anxieties of various sort of projections of things that may or may not happen, some things like meditation can be of assistance. That's all I wanted to say.
Or much more.
Uh,
Depends. I the practice you did, Michael, yeah, I did the same practice, but I did it for 30 years. So, what, 20 years ahead of you there. I think you said you did it for 10 years, right?
You're always
So,
ahead of Michael, aren't you, Tony?
and no, no, not always.
what was your mantra?
Sometimes. Well, you're not supposed to say what your mantra is.
I know.
That's why it didn't work.
Why is that?
Because the mantra, because I also teach this practice,
Mm,
because the mantra lives at a very subtle level in the mind. And if you verbalize it, you make it gross. You see, you make it
okay. Okay.
gross by
I
by
can see
repeating
that.
it. So
Yeah,
you
I
want
can
it to be
say
subtle. You want to be, yeah, that's all. But it's all right. You won't get burnt at the stake for revealing it, but
it. No.
I wouldn't worry about that. But you see, I had a completely different experience, you see, completely
Yeah.
different experience. Um, and okay, a lot of people do it and then they stop because they hit some road bumps, and then they don't realize that it's not necessarily a linear process. So they hit a speed bump, and then they think, oh, it's not working anymore. You see, so it's not a linear process, as I said. But so my experience is very different, and I did it for 30 years until I got to the end of practice. So uh, and now I can do this. Now I can do this little trick, and now I can do this little party trick. It's not important at all, but I can just stop thinking, not have a single thought for as long as I want. But
Mm.
it's just that's just a little party trick. Party trick. There's no big deal about that. But I can literally stop thinking for as long as I want. Not a single thought will enter my mind. But okay,
Yeah.
that's
Here, I think meditation can have wonderful benefits. Current contemporary science knows that. It can slow heart rate and lower blood pressure, and it does kind of quiet the mind. But here it's seen as comparable to applying a band-aid to a bullet hole. It can temporarily soothe the existential angst, which is good. That's nice relief. But what causes this is something deeper, something. For me, it was, I believe, a childhood molestation that I could not put my head around until a healing process of therapy, a lot of therapy. Uh, the lady who comes to Mario, I love you. It's so good to hear your voice. Uh, the lady who came to him, I'm sure will benefit from quieting the mind or watching her breath, but that's a temporary band-aid. Something else is bothering her, something deeper, something she can't quite reach. That's why I believe I healed a lot of things in Alcoholics Anonymous, telling my sponsor everything I did and everything I regretted and things I felt guilty for. Um, it was a gradual healing, digging through the lifetime of accumulated debris that that culminated in what I see as this fundamental shift in perspective. It did not come through meditation. I think that it helped me. But I did spend a lot of time that could have been spent with my children skiing or playing or bonding. Um, hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours, and it didn't help me at all. But that's just me. I appreciate Tony. I I love his perspective, the but I think there is a fundamental disagreement as to the beneficial effects
I
of.
mean, what you have to ask yourself is this question: if it's not transcending the mind to find out what you really are, if it's not that, then it can only be mind. So then it goes back to what you were saying about, digging out over many, many years. This is just the mind. If you're not getting rid of the mind, then it means you have to use the mind to try and fix yourself, because what's the alternative?
I don't see the self and mind as being separate. I don't see the mind or self as actual entities. We see them as the objectifying brain sees them as an actual entity, but there's no such thing as mind. It doesn't exist except as an idea. There's no such thing as self.
No, there's no
Ex-
such thing as a mind. It's just thought. Mind is just thought, one
Well, even
thought
thought.
after another.
Thought is not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not an entity. There's no such thing as thought.
But you use the word. You use the word, so you recognize it has a meaning.
It exists only in the word. Things exist only in the
Well,
naming. There's no such thing as
yes.
a mountain. There's no line,
Okay. Yes, yes, true. In the absolute sense, but in the relative sense, there is. You can go and climb a mountain tomorrow.
but there's no such thing as a mountain.
Yeah,
There's no line
but are you going to be
around.
concerned about that when you're
I
climbing the
think so.
mountain?
I think at a core level, the brain has to understand that things don't exist except in the naming of them. That's, I think, a fundamental realization. There are no things. There's no such
Yeah,
thing.
I've said this to you. I've said this
Which
to you
is
before.
good. Which is good because fear is just a thought, isn't it? It's the thing.
You are making me anxious.
Well, I've said this before. Don't name them. I mean, the solution is simple. Don't name them. It's
Can you
just
think of anything without a name?
no, because you don't think. Because where does the thinking come in? Where is it appropriate?
We don't know. No one can ever know that. No one knows what thinking is. No one knows what consciousness, awareness, the mind. Those are just names. They're observations given a name.
So you
We
didn't
don't
find
do
out
anything
after 10
without first
years.
thinking it. Everything starts with a thought, otherwise nothing will be done.
Is there such a thing as thought? Is there such a thing as a thought?
But whatever it is, it's a starting point. It's always the foundation of
Yes, of course there is, Michael. Yes, the answer is definitely yes. Of course there is. But yeah, at the same time, it's not a thing. You see, you've got to get the paradox into this. There is such a thing as a thought because we can talk about thoughts. We acknowledge thoughts. We talk
We
about the meaning of thoughts. Therefore,
can
there
talk
is such a
about
thing as
thought.
a thought. But at the same time, on an absolute level, there's no such thing as a thought. You've got to appreciate these contradictions.
Do you? Do you?
Yes.
That's trying to adjust the mind to an unreal situation. You don't have to adjust or twerk the mind to become more to be a more pleasant experience. There's no such thing as mind to twerk. There's no such thing as mind. There's no such thing as thought.
That's a claim, that's a
Can you
statement. I
think of
mean,
a
it's
thought? Can you think of an
I think
isolated?
at the end, all there is a screen. That's it. You're looking at the
yeah, but
screen and that's it. There's
I'm
the
surprised
screen
actually,
that is
Michael did
uh,
TM for 10 years and he's still asking the question, what is consciousness? After practicing TM for 10 years. That's very interesting.
I'm
it's
saying
like
there's no such thing
it's
as
like
thing.
saying that it's like saying that we've no stomach because we the digestion happened all on its own without us having to do anything about it.
Is the
Hmm.
stomach an
So
isolated
the
organ?
job of
It
of a
exists in
brain is to have ideas
no,
and
the brain
to make
says
sense
that.
of the ideas together.
I
no,
think we're
no.
over
At the
talking.
end of the day, there's nothing there. It's just emptiness. We all know that. I mean, when you actually
Well,
experience it, what is it?
it's
There's nothing.
full of ideas that people
The
by
only, yeah,
reading books
you
and
know,
from listening to other people.
The only obstacle, the only obstacle to the reality that you seek is the mind. That's it. The mind is the only obstacle to that.
I think that
It's
that's a
very
thought.
simple, very simple.
I think
It's
that
not,
that's a
it
thought.
seems, but that's not the answer to it. No one can understand what anything is. No one. No one ever has or ever will.
Of course, but I'm not talking about understanding.
Of course you are.
No,
It's
I'm not.
holograms. It's just
You think I am because I've
holograms
made it a
trying to make
concept.
sense of a world. That's
I'm
all it
using
is. It's
language,
just
Michael. I'm using
holograms that
language.
we are within it, and that's making sense of it. What is making sense of this? We are within this consciousness or whatever it is, and that's how you
Yeah, but
feel it. And
Razia,
making sense of a world.
yeah, okay. As soon as you use language, though, you're making it into a concept because language is dualistic.
Uh,
So even if I'm experiencing something that is beyond words, beyond description, and I just tell you what it is, or I put a label on it, then immediately it becomes a concept. But that's not what's actually happening. That's not what's happening.
What is beyond words? What exists beyond words?
I can't tell you.
Everything. You don't need
Oh,
words.
I
Everything.
can't tell you, Michael.
Patrick,
Tony, I think we all agree with you. How does
did
that
you
make you
know
feel?
Do
when
another 10 years.
when Billy takes his
Yeah,
shirt off?
yeah. Even if you take a word
Okay,
like
Michael,
bird,
do another 10
what
years
is
and come and
bird?
see me in my office.
Yeah, guess what?
No,
Everybody gets
no. Just take one word and try and make sense of the word. Take the word
Did,
bird.
did you
What
know
is
when
bird?
someone takes their
Have
shirt
you heard
off,
of it?
they want to fight?
But look, but
That's
look,
part of
okay,
men are happy.
Michael, you use the phrase many times I've heard you talk about the peace that passes understanding. So
yeah.
how is that not a concept? How is that not a concept?
It's a
I've heard you
sublime.
say it many times.
Of course, all we have is concepts. That's all we are is concepts. For me, the peace that passes understanding is sublime emptiness. There's always a sublime emptiness here.
Okay, so it's not a concept, right?
Well, of course, all we have is concepts. That's all we
It's a
are.
concept when you tell me. It's a
Tony,
concept when you communicate it with
Doesn't exist.
language.
Doesn't
But
exist.
otherwise, the peace that passes understanding is what? It's sublime. You see, you use the word
quietness.
sublime. That already suggests that it's transcendent.
We are the conceptual perspective. That's all the persona is. There's no way around that. There's no escape. You cannot think of
Yeah, but
something
I'm not talking about the persona, you see. This is
Tony,
what keeps
else,
getting missed.
the self,
Tony,
I amness.
Tony. We've gone over 10 minutes again because of these questions.
Darn it.
You always like to
All
throw a
right.
curveball in right at the end.
Claire, time is an
Claire,
illusion.
I just
Surely
wanted to
you know
say
We
to
that.
cannot
you,
talk about this.
yeah.
The conclusion is this cannot be spoken about. So I suggest we all be quiet.
Claire, just
That's
one
very
thing to
good.
Tony. This is what is trying to make sense of itself. This is also what is trying to make sense of itself.
Well,
I
there's
don't know
no
if that
Oh,
makes
I,
sense.
I stopped trying to make sense of things, a very, very long time ago. But
Yeah, if you are
I
going to
understand what
say
you're
that.
saying.
We're very happy to humor 10 extra minutes. But I need to go because I need to eat.
It's
no.
the bonus 10. Oh, yes. Don't
We,
forget to tune in and get the bonus 10 minutes. It's the bonus 10 minutes.
We're never
uh,
on time, are we?
you
If you
Thank you so
subscribe
much, everyone.
within the next 7 days, you'll get the bonus 10 minutes.
I'm gonna cut it now, so that's what
I will
everyone's gonna
see.
get. Thank you so much.
I will
Right.
see you all
Thanks,
tomorrow.
Love you,
everyone.
Claire.
Thank
Tomorrow.
Love
you.
you,
Thank
Bye,
you.
Michael,
everybody.
Patrick,
Bye.
Bye
Ashok,
bye.
Hush, Took,
Tony,
it was grand to
Mario,
see you.
Phyllis.